Namaste India and welcome back to the evening session of LinkedIn Local India Online third year anniversary gala. My name is Preeti Chaudhary and I am your host for this segment of the day. With me here is our next guest, Mr. Rupesh Tripathi, who is the head of people at KPMG Global Services Center. He is a keen marathoner and a blogger. And what good opportunity and a great time for me to be in conversation with Rupesh today. Today also happens to be a big day in terms of India, wherein we start the vaccination for the misfortunes that have befallen the human race as of last year. But then again, let's look at the glass from a half full perspective. Let's talk of all the positives and all the possibilities and all the opportunities that is to learn from each other, to pick up on best practices, to connect, to communicate, and to collaborate. And with that, it's once again welcome to Rupesh. Rupesh, it is over to you, please, from your personal and professional perspective. How have you sort of navigated these very different times, and what has been your learning along the way? When you look at everything in its totality, so your work, your passion of running, your creativity of writing, family, being a son, husband, father, and everything else. Over to you. Thank you.
Preeti, first of all, thank you for having me. I've been following your work on LinkedIn, and kudos to the energy, enthusiasm, and passion that you bring in everything that you do. And congratulations on the third anniversary of LinkedIn Local India. Wish you the best for the journey ahead. So when we were talking the other day, and you mentioned to me that you would like today to be more of a celebration of all things good in 2020, right, despite the pandemic. So what I thought was I would share a few of my experiences and my thoughts around the ways that have helped me reframe my perspective around 2020, how I went around experiencing 2020 by just switching the way I looked at things. Though, before I jumped into it, I do want to take a minute to say that we absolutely feel for everyone out there who are, either battling with challenges of job loss or mental and physical health issues or loss of loved ones, and many more challenges that these times has brought upon us, right? So in no way do I want to belittle the pain and reality of those challenges. Now, the ability to spot the opportunities and the silver linings around the dark clouds is articulated beautifully in this concept that Nassim Taleb calls antifragility. And I did caught the previous talk, and even Rupa spoke about Black Swan, again a work by Nassim Taleb. Now, I've been referring to it in every opportunity I get these days, right? As many listeners would already know, as per Taleb, antifragility is the opposite of fragility. It is beyond resilience. It is the ability of humans, of systems, of organizations to bounce back from stressors, challenges, and uncertainties, not just to how they were before those challenges, but much stronger. And the simplest way to understand this is by considering human body, right? When we apply stress to our muscles through whatever form of workout that we may choose to do, the muscles tear and they repair and then they recover. Now, the result is that they are stronger than what they were before the workout. And that, in its simplest sense, is antifragility. Now, I firmly believe that we have this innate ability as humans, as professionals, and even as organizations to do the same. In my view, the first step to realize antifragility is to recognize the opportunities and the possibilities, right? So how does one approach these days of pandemic and lockdown and slow down in order to be anti-fragile? I'll kind of take next, I guess, around 10 minutes just talking through those. I like to categorize them under three broad constructs: rediscovery, reinvention, and reset. 3 R's, if you want to call them. So talking through a little bit in detail and adding some of my own examples and stories to bring them to life. Rediscovery, in my mind, is all about pausing and reflecting. It is about looking back at our life choices, our achievements and disappointments. It's all about trying to figure out how we got where have we got to, right? Our innate gifts, strengths, and values on one side, our shortcomings on the other side. And the way one can do it is either by themselves, by sitting and introspecting, or work with someone who knows us well and who we can trust, or maybe even a professional coach. I personally am privileged to have my own personal coach who lives with me. Pallavi, my wife, is also a student of human behavior. She's a HR professional, and she's my go-to person, right? So for whenever I need to someone to help figure things out, so go do and find someone. So that's first, rediscovery. Next comes reinvention, right? This is where, having introspected, we start to take actions to move forward. And I categorize reinvention in, again, four spaces: mind, body, heart, and home. Mind reinvention, as you would imagine, is all about learning, is about experiencing, it's about growing. And thanks to partly to the pandemic, just look at the plethora of learning opportunities available out there without moving out of your house, without moving from in front of your phone or your iPad or your computer. Now, again, an example. So I like to read, but I've never managed more than, I would say, 20-25 books in a year, right? Given the demands of work and life and travel and so on and so forth. Last year, I managed more than 40. Now, thanks to all the time that was saved from commute and travel and audiobooks during my long runs, etc., I'm sure 40 would not be a big deal for many listeners, right? Now, the point is not to look at what others are doing or a particular number. The point is to prioritize mind reinvention. Choose what works for you. It could be reading, it could be watching TED Talks, it could be anything, and do more than what you would have done in peacetime. Next kind of reinvention is body reinvention, right? And it's all about physical well-being. It's about cultivating healthy habits, exercise, what we eat, etc., etc. Now, this was the year when people actually saw the need to be healthy really, really up close. And I was reading some studies around around some activity tracking apps that they have that they're published, and it actually this year has led to a surge in cycling and running and yoga, etc. During the pandemic. Now, as Preeti mentioned, I'm a passionate runner. I actually was in my journey of doing the 6 world major marathons. I had done 4, so Berlin, London, Chicago, and New York, and the last 2 were to be done in 2020. So I was already registered for Boston and for Tokyo. Unfortunately, that has gone out maybe a year or 2 in future. But as the lockdown happened, I couldn't run, right? And that I just couldn't step out of the house. I took yoga, right? And I absolutely loved it. So that was physical or the body reinvention. Third is heart reinvention. This is where I put in meditation, mindfulness, compassion, giving, being kind to self and to others. Now, as an organization, we actually introduced ways to volunteer remotely as part of our CSR, our corporate social responsibility initiative, and we saw some great uptake. I actually have been using this time to mentor a few MBA aspirants, some women leaders, some underprivileged students, and absolutely rewarding an experience. Lastly is the home space, and this is where relationships come in. Right? So it's with our partners, with parents, with kids, spending quality time with them, strengthening the bond. Now, we as a firm, like many others, transitioned to 100% remote working from mid-March. And what we have figured is about 40 to 45% of our colleagues have actually moved away from the office locations to their hometowns. And we hear stories that many of them have never spent this much time with their parents and siblings since the time they would have moved out for their education or for their first job, etc. It's absolutely heartening to hear some of those stories and experiences. So that was reinvention. And after that comes reset. This is where we start to reevaluate our future goals, our career choices, our priorities, right? And we start to act towards them. Now, it is seen that after any significant economic downturn, the employment rates usually do not bounce back to the pre-downturn levels. There is a large emergence of entrepreneurs and gig workers that happen. This is the time to evaluate those options, right? So working for self, working on things we are passionate about are absolutely incredible gifts. And so we usually are too secure to look at making the move, but the current scenario may be the best time to take that plunge if that aligns to your priority. So those were 3 R's: reinvent, rather first rediscover, then reinvent, and reset. Let me add before I end a quick example of organizational anti-fragility. I do realize that many of listeners would be wearing that hat. And I would take an example of the organization that I represent, KPMG Global Services. We are captive. We are close to 12,000 colleagues to support our US, UK, and other global member firms. Now, we have always taken pride in being a very colleague-centric organization, right? But as we went through the initial days of pandemic, when there were uncertainties and everyone were figuring things out, right? There was absolutely no playbook for this sort of event. We anchored on our culture of people centricity to drive every decision. Saying that's what we're going to do. We ensured that the colleague safety and their families' health and well-being were kept at the heart of every decision of ours. That was one. Second, we ensured fair, honest, transparent, and very frequent communication. We listened to what our colleagues were saying, and we acted on it with agility. We reinvented a whole lot of processes, and we have been hiring and onboarding virtually thousands in the last 10 months that we have done. We are training virtually. We launched a series called Vitamin Josh, which is actually a series of webinars on mental and physical health, yoga, Zumba activities that parents can enjoy with their kids, and so on and so forth. We had something called an appreciation week, wherein we nudged our colleagues to thank their peers and tell them what they admire about them. We had more than 40,000 virtual messages going out in a matter of a week, right? And in its own small way, what I believe is it honed in our colleagues' focus to what was working. They started thinking about what was good, what was positive, and whether they were the ones who said thank you to someone or whether they received them. I'm pretty sure it gave them a little more strength to fight this out than before. And as a result of all of these and many more initiatives, what we are hearing from our people is that they can feel and experience our culture in a much, much stronger and personal ways. We haven't seen any drop in productivity. Our colleagues are engaged. Even our new hires that we have been onboarding, virtually, is experiencing the culture without ever having stepped into our offices. We, in fact, very recently concluded our annual engagement survey, and a score has come out to be highest ever by a wide margin. Right, so now that, in my views, and how an appropriate response to a crisis can help turn the crisis into an opportunity, and that in its truest sense is anti-fragility. So, Preeti, back to you once again, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Rupesh, for those stellar insights. And what I love is those 3 R's. I'm going to make sure go back and research a little bit more, customize and fine tune to my own specific requirements, and I'm going to be actioning on them because that is who I am, a person who believes in action rather than just sitting on ideation. So thank you very much for bringing that to my light. Now, couple of quick things, Rupesh. You are an outdoor person and you're restricted now and cannot run and so on. And you said that you've taken up yoga as an alternative sort of means of maintaining, if I may use the word, your sanity amongst this entire chaos. What will be your couple of quick tips for people going through a lot of upheaval and a lot of stress during this time? What is the best way of centering yourself, Rupesh? What do you think? Over to you.
Sure.
Thank you.
And before I come to those tips, so yeah, I couldn't run when there was complete lockdown, but the minute the relaxation happened, I was gearing to go out, and like, okay, I got to do this now, and that was when the summer of Delhi and the humidity of Delhi hit, right? So thankfully for all us, a lot of us runners, there is something called HDO, or 100 days of running, that usually happens during that period. And the whole idea behind that is for people to get motivated to get out every day. The ask is that you have to be out, and even if you're running a kilometer, usually it's 2 kilometers. This year they said 1 kilometer, that's it, but just get out. So I started that. I did for 66 days. I went out and ran every day. On 66th day, I had a bad fall, and I I had a shoulder dislocation. Doctor said, sorry, no more running. So then I started walking every day. I managed to finish all 100 days without a break. So I'm super chuffed about that. But coming back to, what can some people do during this time? One, I would say, what I started with saying, reframe, right? Just shifting perspective to view the disaster from different angles. Second is look at what is working. It could be a space, in the space of work or in other parts of lives, but just slow down and see and look for things which are working rather than always getting bogged down by the newspaper and media and news channels which only spotlights what's wrong in the world. Third is invest in your growth, in your learning, in technology, in tools. And lastly, I would say take actions. And Preeti, you just mentioned that you're women of action to come back stronger, right? Look at how to thrive and not just survive in these times. And I'll end with this favorite quote of mine from Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, and let me read it. It says, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. I really think it summarizes all that we have been discussing, absolutely beautifully. And here's wishing all of you a very happy 2021. May this be the best year of your lives yet.
And on that note, Rupesh, I cannot end. Thank you. And on that note, I cannot end this conversation before asking you what others to 80-year-olds can pick up by listening to what you have to say now. Over to you. Thank you.
I actually, early in the year, I actually put in I wrote a post on LinkedIn and questioned the whole concept of making resolutions on 1st of January. Right? The whole point behind that is what happens on 1st of January that we suddenly think that everything is going to be great from tomorrow, right? Nothing changes, but still there is just so much hope that because the calendar has changed, the life is going to be different, the circumstances is going to be different, the world is going to be different, COVID is going to go away. And it all is nothing but we shift the way that we had viewed things. We say that now this is the time for me to enlist myself in what I want to do, set my goals, set my priorities, and work towards it. That can happen on every single day, right? It doesn't need 1st of January. Any day you get up and say, okay, from tomorrow, I'm going to go and do this. Personally, I think there are a lot of amazing learnings that I myself picked up over last year. I would want to continue with them. One of the big ones was just slow down. Literally when you say slow down and stop and smell the roses, I think that's a huge learning, for me. I think I would like to do that. I ended up spending a lot of time with my family, with my kids. The 3 meals in the day, just having it together, working from home. I would want to make sure that I keep as much of that going as possible. Earlier, we would travel on a drop of the hat, even for a day, for an hour of meeting. We'll say, how can we continue to leverage technology and remote way of connecting the way we are doing this, more and more. I would want to surpass my reading number of last year and go beyond, 41 that I did last year. On the creative side, I like to oil paint. Last year, when the lockdown happened, even Amazon stopped supplying paints, right? They said only necessity stuff. So then I started sketching on iPad, started doing digital painting. I want to go back and, start doing some bit of oil painting myself. So list goes on, I think there is just so many opportunities out there. And I think one of the conversations earlier said that our lifespan is becoming 90 to 100 days very soon, and there's just so much time that we have now in our productive age, and that's just such a blessing for us to continue to reinvent ourselves, rediscover ourselves, and keep learning and doing new things.
Absolutely, and thank you so much. This has been an amazingly insightful session personally for me as well, so I'm sure the audience will take a thing or two or a few from what you had to share today. With that, I would like to thank you, Rupesh, for being my guest today on this LinkedIn Local India's 3rd year anniversary gala on LinkedIn via LinkedIn Live. with your permission, Rupesh, this is your host Preeti Chaudhary signing off and saying to everyone to stay safe. Good things will come. Just hang in there. Keep moving forward. Thank you once again and see you very soon, Rupesh.
Thank you.